Welcome back, y'all, to the PCC podcast. Before we get into today's episode, which is an incredible interview with our incredible client, Laura, we are going to just give you a quick reminder about the 100th episode giveaway that is going on right now just for one more week. Okay, y'all. So this launched when we had our 100th episode come out of the PCC podcast. That's literally freaking insane. And we're doing a $100 gift card giveaway to celebrate. How you can win this gift card giveaway is very, very simple. All you need to do is give us a 5-star rating and a written review on either Apple Podcasts or Spotify Podcasts. And at the end of this month, we are going to draw one winner from all of the entries that we have. And that person will win a $100 gift card to a vendor store of their choice. So make sure to do that real quick. If you are not driving, just get it done right now. It takes you 2 minutes and then you'll be entered to win $100. All right, enjoy the episode. Welcome back to the PCC podcast. And today I have a very, very special guest and a client of ours here at PCC, Laura Parks. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Marissa. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited. So we're gonna, go through Laura's journey in totality, so you guys will know a lot more about her by the end of this episode. But today, really, we wanted to touch on some things that are universally applicable to all of our journeys when we are making a lifestyle transformation, a body transformation, a health transformation. We are transforming more than just our physical appearance or our internal health markers. We are transforming our psychology, the way we think, and the way that we see ourselves. And so Laura has done a really great job of embodying that. I was kind of just telling her off air, like, I just feel like you've embraced this part of the journey so much. And that's what I think is going to make you so successful in the long run, is, it's not just knowing what to eat and knowing how to work out. It's becoming that next version of yourself, Laura 2.0. So let's start with this. I mean, if you want to just do a quick introduction for you outside of this journey, just like who you are, what you're all about in life, maybe what you do for work, and then kind of bring us towards what brought you towards PCC.
Yeah, sure. I am a mom of a 22-year-old daughter, and I grew up in England, but I've lived in the States for the last almost 20 years. So nobody knows what my accent really sounds like anymore. I don't know if I'm English or American or what. But yeah, I have been kind of practicing yoga on and off since my late teens. I grew up in a town that was very kind of alternatively minded. So a lot of emphasis on health foods and yoga and kind of alternative practices. So a lot of that really kind of has influenced me in a really positive way. And what's really interesting is, as I've come through this journey, just being able to hold things more in balance rather than this. And I'll get into this more kind of when we're talking more about this, all or nothing thinking has been one of the banes of my existence. And certainly kind of growing up in this alternative mindset, it's oh, this is the way that I need to view the world because this is what I've grown up with. It's not to say that it was good or bad or anywhere in between, but just, that can be a really strong influence. Our childhood patterns can sometimes lead us into these ideas of this is the way it has to be. And that's impacted, my food intake in positive and negative ways. So, so I've been here for almost 20 years. I work in the solar industry, which it's really cool to work in renewable energy. And when I'm not working, I love to be in my garden or on my yoga mat or curled up with a good book by the fire or out on a hike. Just, a variety of so many interests and so many loves in my life. Yeah. And I found PCC, although I don't think that's really true. I think PCC kind of found me, and it was this moment of grace in my life when things had gotten incredibly challenging for me, emotionally, physically, I just was not in a good place, and I might even have been at some kind of level of rock bottom when a text from Tara just came out of the blue of like, "Hey, do you want to set up an appointment to talk to Marissa?" And it was, I don't know, this kind of like light in the tunnel or something that I was incredibly skeptical about, but I was like, well, what have I got to lose here? And yeah, I just felt like this moment of grace coming into my life to help me make a change that I had, lost sight of the how to be able to. Yeah. So, and six,
Yes.
8 months later, here we are.
That's awesome. Yeah, we're coming up on a year, which is super exciting. But yeah, it's really crazy the timing of these things because it's not just your journey where it's kind of like, yeah, the timing just like seemed perfect. It kind of felt like it came out of nowhere, but like here we are. And I think that's what's so beautiful about this is like we connect through the internet. We run ads, we're on different social media platforms. You just never know who's going to find you and how you'll connect. But I think it's all meant to happen, which is really cool. So in that point in your life, like I know we did the push and the pull exercise when you started with the PSB program of
Mhm.
who is a version of you that you're leaving behind and who is a version of you that you're becoming. So when you found PCC, or like, let's say like in those moments before you joined and you started, like what version of Laura was that? Like what did she value, prioritize? Where were her beliefs and where was her energy going? And like what contributed to you being in the position that you were at that time?
Yeah, great question. And it's interesting. I look back and I'm like, it wasn't all bad. Like I was focusing on some really cool things, doing a lot of crafts, and really like embracing my creative self. But at the same time, like my emotional relationship with food was super unhealthy, and I had been in a period of like grief and loss and change for about the past 2 years, 2.5 years before that. Like I lost my dad. Um, I hadn't been home for many, many years. I went home for the first time in like 18 years. And when I got back, I was really bereft. Like I don't know any other way to describe it. And I was just thinking, like, there's got to be some word in some language that's more articulate and eloquent than our language to describe the feeling of loss when one is so far from home for such a long
Mm.
time. It's a particular kind of grief and isolation and loneliness. I have amazing friends, wonderful community here, and yet there was this awareness because I hadn't been home. I hadn't known what I was missing, and
Yeah.
so going home and tasting that, like touching back in, being on my home soil with my friends I grew up with and the land I grew up with, and just having this feeling like I was like inside my soul when I was home, and then coming back and just feeling so lost and confused. I'm like, what the hell am I doing with my life? Like what is going on? Why am I here? All of this like existential, like absolute angst. And so I turned to food, and it kind of was a gradual thing, but there was this like deep, deep emptiness. And I remember like sitting with my therapist and being like, I can't stop eating. I just can't stop eating. And he's just like, well, what's going on? Like, I just feel so empty. I'm just trying, I'm just so empty. And he's all like, can you sit with the emptiness? And I'm like, I can try, but I couldn't, it was just, there was something that I
Mhm.
was missing so much. There's just such this void in myself that I couldn't fill. And I was trying really hard, and I was turning to foods that I never normally eat. Like no shade on anyone who loves donuts. I think they're great. They're just not for me, right? And I was just like eating like 2, 3 donuts a day, just like going down to the Dunkin' Donuts to get. I'm like, what the hell is going? This isn't me. Like, what is going on? Like, and I just, was sitting there on the couch, like after dinner, just like smashing like bowlfuls of chocolate chips and marshmallows, and it is a delicious snack, I'm not gonna lie, but like um um it was so far from who I had known myself to be previously. And
Yeah,
I couldn't stop myself.
absolutely.
And so like the weight was coming on and coming on and coming on, and I just felt completely out of control. And
Hmm.
and I didn't know how to make any change around that. And there was just this, with the physical weight comes this emotional heaviness as well. Sometimes, at least it did for me, because it was just related to
Hmm.
the emotional experience that I was having, and this loss of direction and loss of priorities, and you know loss of myself. I think there was a big sense of loss of myself, and and so when I was approached by Tara, and when I signed up, or when I met with you, um, I didn't believe there was any way out. I was like, this is it. This is who I am now. This is how my body, I'm just going to get old and die. I'm just going to get older and fatter, and then I'm going to die. And, I'd been on a weight loss journey before, and I'd lost like 65 pounds and had been really happy with my weight. And then I had broken my toe and gotten into this cycle for a couple of years where I just couldn't. I gained weight, I lost a little, I gained more, I lost a little, and it was just gradually creeping up.
Hmm.
And I had, spent 2 years being like, I want to be this weight, this, X number on the scale. And I couldn't get there. And I kept trying, and I couldn't get there. And then, I eventually gave up. And that's kind of when you just appeared like magic. And it was like, no, there's another
Yeah.
way.
Wow. That's a pretty uncanny, yeah, coincidence. Do you remember? I have it in your intake form actually of what you stated was your goal at the time when we started,
I don't
before we had
remember.
our call. You said, "I'd love to lose 20 pounds," and I screenshotted that because I was like, once we got past that mark, I was like, that is going to be cool to look back on because you're
Yeah.
what, nearing 40 pounds down
Yeah.
now, like
So now I'm
36 to
at 40
40.
pounds. Yeah.
Did you ever think that that would be a reality, like at this age, at this stage in your life, like any of that?
No, no, I didn't. Because, before I broke my toe, I was like around like 120, between like 128, 132, something like that, and that was where I really wanted to get back to. So my like wanting to lose 20 pounds was just like, I think this is what I can manage to do. It's not what I really want, but it's like, I just felt like striving for 40 pounds was like, that's insane. I'm never going to be able to do that.
Mhm.
And now, like, I'm back at the weight that I was when, I was 23. Like, it's insane. It's so cool. And I'm like, I'm stronger now. I'm stronger, I'm more flexible. And, my body doesn't look like it did when I was 23, because there's no way that would, it's just my body has aged. And because of weight loss and or weight gain and weight loss, there's just, there's extra skin, where it's stretched out and stuff. And but like the more that I'm on this journey, the more I was just like thinking about this, like my body image has changed so much. Like I know there's like bits and pieces that aren't perfect, but I don't even want it to be perfect. I want it, this body is now a reflection of my journeys. And so it's, and also, my body is aging, and I love it, because when I look at myself in the mirror and I see, jiggly bits or whatever, I'm like, it doesn't matter. This is all beautiful, because my body, what I see in my body now is what it can do. It's like I can lift X amount, and I
Mhm.
can do the splits, and I can do all the stuff that I never imagined I would be able to do with my body. So there's so much that I love my body for, yeah, what it gives me, what I can do with it. And so like now like taking care of it is such a priority in a way that's not like kind of like this. It is rigorous in a way, but it's not kind of like this militant discipline kind of thing. Like I'm being really hard on my body. I'm like giving my body all of this like
Mhm.
love, whether it's in the form of what I eat or how I stretch or, what I'm doing in my workouts. Like I'm doing all this because of self-love and this love for my body.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. And ultimately, I think too, um, like you said, it's not this militant, like unsustainable type of approach that you can't keep going for the long haul. And I think what's beautiful about it is that it's been able to adapt with you through life in general, going back to your hometown for a couple weeks, for traveling every single week for work now, like, and it's adapted with you through all of that, because
Mm-hmm.
it really was about becoming the version of you that prioritizes you and prioritizes self-care rather than a dogmatic, here's a PDF with your type, with your workouts and your food, and this is how you do it. It's who did you become that makes it work in any sort of context, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess like with that shift, right, I think it's like going from just following protocols, doing kind of, data or number based things for weight loss in the past to now you've lost almost 40 pounds and it's more been an identity transformation for you, like in that process, right? Because we kind of skipped. We went from like you're rock bottom to like you're 40 pounds down. And people are like, what happened in between? So, what would you say, Laura, when you started this journey with PCC, really surprised you the most about the approach being something rather than being something that was like, here's your food, here's your workouts? It was instead about you becoming the version of you that is adaptable, that pivots, that takes care of yourself. Like, what about that approach really surprised you at the beginning?
Yeah, I think that like the most surprising thing was the the way that the approach enabled me to move past this all or nothing thinking. And
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't even known that was a belief system I had subscribed to. Um,
Mm-hmm.
when I was, I mentioned earlier about this kind of like this idea about like, you know, the all or nothing thinking that kind of like builds with us from childhood of like this is the way it has to be. So, in my head, it's like if I am going to be a healthy person, I have to do yoga every day, and I don't eat this, and I don't eat that, and I only eat this, and I only eat that. and
Mm-hmm.
and there was very much this experience in my life that was kind of fueled by that belief system that I would like get on the wagon with yoga and do it every day, and I would do it every day, and then I was a successful person at being someone who practiced yoga. And then if I like missed it for a day, I would miss it for another day. And then it would be like really hard to get back on track with any kind of practice, because I'd missed it. And then I became a person who didn't do that. And kind of various things happened along the journey, not only with your advice and suggestion about being 80% consistent. If you're 80% consistent, you will see results. And this was so true. And just, having this like 20% buffer, if you like, um, that I didn't always need to make use of, but just like kind of knowing that was there, and seeing it in practice, I think was really incredible. Like when I traveled and I wasn't able to weigh myself and log my food, and I had to kind of trust myself to eat well, and came back and I hadn't, I'd been gone for 2 weeks and I didn't gain a pound without
Yeah.
tracking anything, and definitely eating outside of that, budget that I had at the time. Um, was really really cool. And then I got sick and I wasn't able to work out or do yoga, and I wasn't certainly wasn't able to conversely, I wasn't eating very much at all, um, found myself like able to get back on track. And so it was this profound shift from this all or nothing thinking to self trust.
Mm.
And instead of identifying myself as I'm a person who does this all the time, and that's what makes me the person who does this at all, was like, I'm a person who trusts myself to take care of my body and to give it what it needs. And so that like allows me to practice when I can and to work out when I can, which is usually 7 days a week, and sometimes it's six. And on those rest days, like, occasionally I struggle with this, like, oh, I should do this. But I also am learning to really ask my body, like, is this what you really want right now? Do you really want to do this just because you think you should do it? Or, and then it's like, no, please, I just need to rest.
Mm-hmm.
And like listening to that and trusting that, and knowing that, okay, that's what we need right now. And it's funny, I'm talking about myself as if I'm separate from my body, but there is kind of like, there's the part of me that like just doesn't really feel like doing it.
Yeah.
Or there's the part of me that's like, no, 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 really, like I need to rest. And knowing that like if I do take that day to rest, it's actually going to make my workout tomorrow better.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not going to mean like, oh well, you're never going to be able to do the splits again if you don't do it today. And
Yeah.
these mindsets that are so um they're so pervasive. And I think, especially for women, it's hard for me to like, I can't really speak for men, but
Yeah.
especially for women, I feel like the standard that we're held to is so much higher. Um, and that's a whole nother conversation.
Oh,
But
yeah.
just this, just this feeling of being able to trust myself. And it comes to food as well. It's like, oh, if I have an ice cream, that's okay. That is actually okay. I don't have to feel guilty. I don't have to freak out that it's going to like, you know, wreck my macros for the day, because I have learned how to navigate that and how to make space for a delicious treat if I want something. And now I don't need to eat the whole pint of ice cream. I can have like a little quarter cup and be just like, oh yeah, that was amazing. And this was something you taught me about how when you're eating something that's really delicious, the actual like the dopamine drops off after like the fourth bite.
Mm-hmm.
So, really savoring those first few bites and just enjoying it so much, and celebrating that, and knowing that I can celebrate eating something that is very dense in calories and full of sugar as a special treat, because there's space for it, there's room for it, and it doesn't mean that I'm now just going to go back to that person who just ate bowlfuls of marshmallows and chocolate chips on the couch because there was, a need to fill myself for comfort. And so I just feel so liberated. And I think that
Mm.
was something that I didn't expect. And I think that like that all or nothing gave me this sense of like, well, if you're going to do this, you have to just do it this way. And this is the way that it has to be. But like,
Mm-hmm.
there are days when I can't follow a meal plan that I haven't meal prepped. But now, with the learning and the knowledge that I've gained, I can throw something together that can look very baffling to an outside eye, but I'm like, this is weird, but I know I'm going to hit my protein goals because I can just make guesses now based on
Yeah,
all of that tracking. Like I don't necessarily have to track all the time anymore because I can make my best guess and it usually comes out pretty close.
totally. Yeah, I love what you said there, Laura, about kind of how you learn to discern, like, really what is trusting yourself versus, like, I don't feel like it. Because
Mm,
that's a question that I get all the time from clients is like I know like I need to build this self-trust of like what I need to do and knowing how to take care of myself and my body, but we're like we're typically, I feel like the women that come here to PCC are typically so like brought up so hard on ourselves, with so much all or nothing thinking, with so much kind of dogmatic thinking around everything, not just fitness, but like
Mhm.
work and sports growing up, and how we approach our career, and how we approach even motherhood, or, things like that. That, like, the belief underneath is like there is no break, or, you know, you keep going, you do it all, you never slip up, or you're a failure, and there's like
Yeah.
zero in between. And so starting to introduce that concept of self-trust, like we just stumble on that so much, because we're like, how do I know what the right answer is? Or sometimes um defaulting to like what we might call laziness or complacency, because it's like, okay, well, I'm going to trust that this is what I need. But we end up just, taking 7 rest days in a row. And we're like, in hindsight, was that really the right move? So the question I have for you, Laura, is like, how did you learn to discern that through this process? Like, how did you learn what is actually the right answer? Like, do I need to take this rest day truly, or do I just not feel like it and I'm succumbing to that right now? Or how do I know when to push through versus to take that break?
Oh, that's such a good question. Um, One thing that really helped me, and this is a slightly different answer, or an answer to a slightly different question, but one thing that helped me build that self-trust muscle was, the travel, the sickness,
Mm,
not being able to do things for a short period of time or a slightly longer period of time, and being able to come back to it. So I think that's kind of part of what influences that ability to take a rest day, because it's like, okay, if I take this rest day, it doesn't mean I'm never going to work out again, you know? And so that really factors in, and it's interesting. I feel like, in life, a lot of what we learn, and a lot of how we learn, is through making mistakes,
yep.
and moving forward from making mistakes. And so even, like, in your example, like, did I really need to take the 7 rest days? Probably not. But we just move forward, and, next time round, maybe just take a couple rest days, if and kind of building that self-trust muscle is kind of reflecting on that feedback. And certainly there have been days when it's like, I probably could have done yoga today, but I was super busy and there just wasn't a window that came up. But I think it's just that really, really, really checking in with my body, and really feeling, where it's at in that moment. Like, do if I would try to do something right now, how would it feel? Like, what does my body really need? I don't, this feels such a vague way of answering it, but it just is this. It's that trust in myself to give my body what it needs, and from that place, like making that decision from that place. And
Yeah.
there's not a lot of times. Other piece of it, I think this is a really important piece, actually, is like, I want to move my body.
Hmm.
Like, I really want to. I know how good it feels. Like, um, and that's something that has kind of like changed for me too. And, it's been kind of on and again, off again throughout my whole life, but in this iteration of me, um, I don't think of working out as this thing that I have to do, or this chore. It's more like this thing that I want to do. And
Yeah.
so if I'm not doing it, if it's not because I don't want to do it, it's because or like, I think it's too hard, or it's too much effort. It's actually like, really like, oh yeah, no, like, this is not a good thing for my body right now.
Yeah. Well, you know what you actually said? There's two really important things about what you said in there. I think both of the answers within that were beautiful, because the first thing you said was the reason that you learned discerning like what is laziness versus actually, following through to the degree that you should or you could, is you learned through failure.
Yeah.
Like you learned through the hard situations like getting sick, traveling, all those things that people tend to try to avoid or just flip the switch off of, like, I'm just going to not anymore because I have this
Mhm.
vacation coming up. And looking at that as feedback. And like, that's actually how our brain is wired. I was recording some content on this the other week, that our brain is actually wired to receive feedback from failures, not from successes. And so if we don't actually reflect on the things that didn't go well, then we don't progress, we don't learn, we don't do differently. And so the reason why a lot of like perfectionistic, all or nothing type people are stuck is because they're avoiding even facing the failure, avoiding situations that would make them feel like a failure, avoiding looking in the mirror when the failure happens. And so I think that something that has, contributed to your success there is the fact that you have always been very open and vocal in the check-ins about, hey, this is what happened, this is how it went down, this is what I learned from it, and
Mhm.
using those failures, not even failures, just instances where things didn't go exactly as planned,
Yeah.
as feedback. And then the second thing you said was, what you did to learn this discernment was tuning into your body. And you kind of then bridged it into talking about how you look at, you know, exercise and moving your body. It's something you want to do. It's nourishment for you. It's not a chore. And like you said, I think it was really interesting. I'll pull an inference from what you said. You can tell me if this is true or not, but you mentioned how like it's been an on and off thing where your view around exercise and moving your body has kind of shifted over the years, like back and forth. Right
Mhm.
now it's that positive I want to relationship, but also like we've really worked on tuning you back into your body, getting you in tune with what your body actually needs. And the interesting thing about that, I think they go hand in hand, because when you actually pay attention to like what we call biofeedback, right? So your
Yeah.
energy levels, your recovery, your stiffness, your tightness, your sleep quality, your digestion, like just all of those things that we have to be tuned into our body rather than just stuck in our brain to
Mhm.
feel. When you exercise regularly, like all of those things get better. Your biofeedback always improves from exercise. Even mood, mental health improves from it too. But you don't really build that association if we're just stuck in our head thinking, right? Thinking about what I should do or how it should look. Just slowing down enough to actually tune back into your body. This is where I think the yogi in you like definitely like had some strengths in doing this, is like tuning back into that is what built that association back of like, I like doing this because of how it actually makes me feel, not because it's this box to check. Would you say that that's accurate?
Oh yeah, so much. And even like I put this in my check-in on Tuesday, but like Monday night, I'd been like stuck at my computer all day, and I was like, oh, probably not going to hit my step goal. Probably not going to. No, I just need to keep working. And then 7:30 hit, and I was like, you know what? I need this. I need to move.
Mhm.
I'd already worked. I'd done yoga in the morning, um, and and so that was, I'd done a thing for myself, but I've found that the walking and the regular movement of our, we're stuck behind desks so much of the time.
Mhm.
And I was like, God, I'm gonna go for a walk right now. Everything else can wait. And I went outside and I just walked along the road, like I'm staying in Maine right now for work, and walked under these beautiful trees and just moving my body, and just like seeing green. My mood shifted instantly, and I was
Yep.
just so happy. And it's just so amazing to think about those things and think, I didn't have to do any grand thing to change my mood. I didn't have to like recreate my entire life. I just had to get outside and move my body. It's not like, you know, it's not. I speak from a privileged position as an able-bodied person.
Mhm.
When I say it's not that hard, but if one is in a body that can move, it's it's a real gift to be able to use that body to create more joy in
Totally.
oneself.
Yeah. Well, I think too, it's like the lens that we could take with it is like it can be that simple. And like, adding a little bit of humor in, it's like, oh, it's almost like we were meant to be in nature and we weren't meant to be in these
And
boxes
move
all
our
day.
bodies. Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I think really like that those are two big things that have contributed to your success. Now kind of looking at where we are now, this is what I've really like what I'm looking forward to unpacking with you, because we've bounced it back and forth on our check-ins, but not live yet. Now you're eating 2,025 calories a day.
Oh my God, it's so much
Crazy.
food.
And maintaining literally the weight that you were when you were 23. Freaking incredible. Repairing your relationship with your body image, wearing shorts like you never did that before, like all these shifts that are so positive for your health, your weight, your body image. And now we're working on this interesting part of the journey, because if you're listening to this and you're not a client or you don't know this step in the journey, typically we're going to track some things like food and calories and protein and fiber to get you to your goal, because what we don't manage or what we don't measure doesn't get managed, right? So you've been tracking your food, your calories, your protein this whole time. And now we are starting to experiment with loosening the reins, with taking untracked days, intuitive eating days, practicing that self trust. And there was a quote in your check in, I believe, I pulled out, and like, I just want to frame it and like have you put it on your desk or on your wall. And like, I think this is such an important reminder for so many people, is that you're learning that loosening the reins doesn't mean that it all falls apart.
Mm.
Because again, all or nothing thinking, if I've loosened the reins in the past and I've been in that all or nothing mindset, give me an inch and I'll take a mile. That's what a lot of people
Yeah.
say, right?
Yeah.
So I want to hear about how that belief is starting to shift now that we are in this phase of the journey, weaning off of tracking and really actually leaning on that self trust to the highest degree.
It's it's such an interesting place to be in. And one thing that, being in this place, like I remember mentioning this in my check-in, or maybe it was just a chat, but just like I'm no longer, I've been for years, I've been this person who's been trying to lose weight or needs to lose weight. And, it hit me at one point when I stopped trying to lose weight. I'm like, wow, I'm not trying to lose weight anymore. I this is a whole new person here. And so it's such an interesting shift to be in this like maintenance phase, full stop. But like I think that it comes down to not failures, but more as like an experimentation. And it's like, what happens if I do this? What happens if I eat this ice cream? What happens if I go out for dinner? Oh, cool. Okay, the scale went up a little bit. Probably there was like a lot of salt in the food, and I probably didn't have enough water, and then the next day it's back down again. But it's interesting being in this place now where I feel safe to experiment
Hmm.
and try new things, because it has been like, fairly, not, I wouldn't say regimented, but like I'm a person who really likes, like really benefits from routine. And I also like have these kind of safe foods. So I've eaten the same smoothie with, minor variations on like whatever frozen fruit I'm throwing in there. But for years, I've eaten the same thing for breakfast. Um, and it's, it's great. I don't want to change it, and so that's something that is like there's this consistency there. But
Mhm.
like there's also space now for like moving away from that consistency, like for like if I go out to dinner and try something new, it's like what, just this kind of attitude of experimentation and seeing what happens. And then, if something happens that I'm like, okay, that didn't really work, then I can try something else. And so but the weight is kind of staying in the same place where wherever, whatever I do, that's kind of, up a pound, down a pound, whatever. But, none of that also is terrifying to me. And that, I remember when, I reached my goal weight and I was like, well, what happens now if it goes up or down and one of these things? And you had said something along the lines of like, well, that was the goal, but you're going to be within a range that's slightly above that. And as soon as I was like, oh, okay, that's cool, then there became this sense of, if I stay within this range, I'm good. It's not like, oh gosh, the scale went up half a pound and now it's all over. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
we're in the range, and and so having days like last week, I didn't track for 3 days, and that was the first time I'd ever done that. And I just, my days were so slammed and packed and crazy. I was just like, and I was eating at like a company party. We had this beautiful day on the lake, and I was just kind of snacking on things. And theoretically, I could have gone home and been like, okay, well, I think I had 4 cherry tomatoes, and I had burgers, and I had probably like 4 of those pita chips, and I had a little, and I was like, it's not worth it. I'm so tired. I just need to rest. I've got so much to do. I just cannot, add this to my plate right now.
Yeah.
And it was okay. And so, it comes back to that like self-trust. Like I know when I'm like, oh, I don't need to eat this right now. And then I know when I do really want to eat this right now. And that's what's really interesting about like eating things that are outside of, that all or nothing healthy eating idea. So if it's like a cookie or a cake or whatever, or pizza, it's like there's totally space within my world and my food plan, for want of a better word, that yeah,
Mm-hmm.
there's space for pizza and there's space for cheese. They're all beautiful, delicious things. Like we're put on this beautiful earth to like also enjoy the fruits of the earth and the fruits of people's creations. And I'm never going to stop baking. Um, and there, there's so much delight, because that's another aspect of our existence as humans. Like, yes, we want to eat food to nourish ourselves, but also like there are like delicious things out there that are purely for the nourishment of the soul.
Mm-hmm.
you know
Yeah.
like ice cream and cake, they're good. These are not like, we're not going to get it to our goals. I don't believe that it's possible to achieve goals in a way that's sustainable if we're going to deny ourselves from pleasure.
Absolutely.
And so, like, what the important shift, I think, for me, was that moving away from emotional eating. So, finding other sources of nourishment for emotional challenges. And because we're all going to have emotional challenges, and
Mm-hmm.
we're all need ways that are really sustainable and supportive to navigate them. And so now it's like, I'm like, do I want this cookie? And maybe I really do, and maybe it's there and I just don't really care. I'm like, no, I don't really want that. And I can look at the delightfully tempting thing and be like, oh, I'm good. Or I can be like, yes, I'm going to enjoy every single mouthful of this and it's going to be amazing, and celebrate that.
Totally. Yeah. And I think too, there's kind of like this theme underneath what you're saying here, Laura, that I think like adds a little bit of context to everything you're saying with this self-trust and loosening the reins. Cause like if I think if someone came into this podcast blind and like had no idea like what we were talking about and was listening to you talk, they'd be like, this is witchcraft. She's just eating willy-nilly and she's losing weight. Like this is witchcraft. Like what drug is she on? And like ultimately, like the reason that there's space for all this and why you are enjoying these treats and things, and like you said, food is social, it's emotional, it's nostalgic. It's so much, it's cultural. It's so much more than just fuel, right? That's one of the
Mhm.
purposes that it serves.
Yeah.
But the theme underneath is like what you do most of the time outweighs what you do some of the time with the
Yeah.
scale, with how you eat. And like what people don't see is like how structured literally everything else is, and how much you do stay prepared, and how much you
Mhm.
do meal prep, and how much you do repeat some of the same meals, or, have a good structure and know how much protein should be in your day in each meal. Knowing, what does a good portion size for you even look like? What does a good amount of movement, exercise look like for you? And you've spent, what week are we on? Like you've spent like 9 months, I think, really dialing in, like,
Yeah.
what does that routine look like for you? So that if you have that small deviation, let's say you don't track for 3 days. Okay, well, you did track for the past 200. So
Yeah.
like, that's not going to make a dent. Right. And so we're looking at percentages and ratios. Like if you really broke down the numbers, what you're doing most of the time is still far outweighing what you're doing some of the time. And you know where the guardrails are, or the expectations, like with the scale. Okay, we set the expectation of this is where it's going to fluctuate. And now you have that expectation set, you know what to expect. So you're not going to spiral or deviate from that one thing that happened. Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's about like having these, like the knowing of what the most of the time needs to be are like your anchors. It keeps you
Yeah.
grounded
Yeah.
in the little things that when people don't know what that is for themselves, like they spiral off of each little thing and then they don't get anywhere because they're just constantly reacting.
Yeah.
Right. Um, so I wanted to ask you because you had mentioned this identity shift of you are now no longer someone who is trying to lose weight. And I'm sure there are so many people that would love to say that about themselves. But I think there is also, I don't want to say a false sense of security in that, but I think it's like people view it as the end, right? They view it as the end of the journey. That's it. Like I'm done. And I think really one thing that we've started to discuss that I've encouraged you in that you'll continue working on for ultimately the rest of your life is the pull, right? So we talked about the push. What are
Hmm.
you moving away from? The version of you that you're moving away from. The pull is who you're becoming. And we never arrive, right? As people, we're
Yeah.
growth oriented. We're trying to get better. We're trying to improve, be our best self. We never arrive. And so your pull is like where you're going. And I think something that's really important in that is having goals for yourself in this realm, health, fitness, wellness, fitness, whatever, that are more than weight loss. So I'd love to hear from you. Like, what are you working on now that you're excited about, that's motivating you outside of weight loss that still has to do with your health or your physique or your wellness or body image?
The thing that comes to my mind right now is actually my garden, interestingly
Ooh.
enough. And it's kind of tied in, there's movement happens, but also, this generating all of this amazing fresh food,
Mm,
mm, just outside of my door, and being able to, you know, really enjoy, the actual fruits of the earth. Um, as growing organically, outside my back door, and creating this beautiful, like haven for wildlife as well. That is, something that really feeds me on such a deep level, that brings me so much nourishment and so much joy. Um, that's one of the things, kind of, still, I guess it's kind of in the realm of health. And
totally.
um but yeah, that is, a huge blessing in my life, to be able to grow some of my own food, and to watch the birds and the butterflies and the bees all be nourished by those actions and those choices, and the things that I've put in my garden, and things that have just grown there by themselves. I'm always here for free flowers, and some people are like, oh, these are weeds. It's like, oh, not to me, they're not. I want them there. So, and they're feeding the pollinators. So I'm totally good with that. But that's something that's really, feeding me, and kind of thinking about how we can develop that and grow more and put more flowers in, and just kind of continue to create that abundance around us. And also, yeah, continuing to work out for not for losing weight, and doing yoga and bar and ballet, not for losing weight, and doing capoeira and all of these like super fun activities just for the love of them, you
Mm-hmm.
know. Um, and yeah, really just continuing to move my body, because I know that it will continue to increase my strength and flexibility and mobility, and just to do it to see what I can do and to continue being able to do more. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so it's moving in from this place of like losing something to gaining muscle, gaining strength, gaining flexibility and mobility, and just gaining joy. Like that's one of the things that has like amazed and inspired me the most, because there's so much joy that comes from having this freedom of movement. And if you'd asked me 2 years ago, like if I would be someone who was really into lifting, I'd be like, oh, I think that's for me. And now I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, bring it on. Like this is so cool.
Yeah.
Um, and especially, as I age, um, that bone density is so important. And
Mm-hmm.
and and so I think that's something that this program has helped me with too. Like if I had tried to go out there and be like, okay, I'm gonna start lifting, like what do I even do? And it's been so fun working with you, because I've you've given me workouts with all this kind of variation in them. And then, as I've gotten stronger, they've gotten more challenging. And there's always been like this variation and this freshness around them. And, now we're starting to use the barbell and do these negative pull-ups, and using, other things to play with to, increase my strength. And, I was working out with the barbell the other day, and the following days I was so sore, like all in like my chest, and I'm like, oh god, this feeling is so good, because I hadn't like felt sore in a while, and I'm like, oh, this is growth, this is progress. And it's just, it's exciting to continue to see how far I can go.
I love that. I love that. So you've got a nutrition aspect and like a soul aspect with the garden. And then you've got, continuing to strive for strength, what you can gain in strength and joy rather than losing and getting smaller, which is so awesome. Cause I know it kind of goes hand in hand with how your body image has shifted too. So I just have one more question for you, and it's an interesting one. Um, I want you to think back to version of you that we talked about at the very beginning, who was
Mhm.
at her rock bottom. And I want you to just speak to her now. Like if you could tell her, everything that was ahead, and, that it was all part of the bigger journey, like what would you tell her?
What? That's so beautiful. um I would tell her that, there is, I was gonna say there's a light at the end of the tunnel, but like you said, we're never done. We're never there. Um, I would say you're going to emerge from this much greater than you could imagine.
Mm.
Like this is part of the process where you are right now, and you have no idea how amazing it's going to be on the other side of this. And I think back to a conversation that we had about like transformation and change being messy. And I think, looking back and seeing that part of my my journey being as like a really integral part of the journey and a necessary part of the journey, because like you said, like our brain is programmed to receive feedback from like failures rather than successes. And when a caterpillar is in transition to become a butterfly, it's you know it's not like this graceful process by any stretch of the imagination.
Mhm.
The caterpillar goes into the chrysalis and becomes goo. Like I remember like accidentally breaking, I didn't know what it was, and accidentally broke open a chrysalis, and it was this bright blue goo.
Oh.
And I was like, oh God, I didn't mean to break it. But it was like so fascinating to see this like part of that becoming a butterfly. And a butterfly is like one of the most beautiful beings in all of existence, in my opinion. Just absolutely such incredible magic and beauty in them. Um, and and they're not like, they don't just start out being a butterfly. Like they start out being this like little kind of little crawly thing that's like real cute and eats a whole ton of food, and and then becomes this pile of goo. And and it's that part of the journey that when you just feel like you're a big pile of goo, like it's okay, because that is a necessary part of the process and that journey to becoming a butterfly. and
Mm.
and I actually have like, I have a ballet skirt that has butterflies and flowers on it, and I wear it in class because it reminds me that when I'm struggling with a sequence, or or an exercise, it's okay, and it's part of the process. Like, because there's going to be times that it's going to be messy and it's going to be gooey, but what we're going for, and that's kind of is this like freedom in flight and
Mm.
beauty. And yeah, so I would probably remind her that like, you're in the chrysalis right now, and
Yeah.
it's okay, and this isn't the end. This is not the end.
Yeah. That's awesome. Oh, that's so beautiful. What a great analogy for growth and for messy transformation, like you
Yeah.
said. So, thank you for sharing all this with me, and honestly with all of the other clients at PCC who listen to this, who probably really need to hear some of these reminders around self-trust, around failure, around
Mhm.
tuning into their body. So thank you so much. And I'm so excited for this episode to come out. Um, and thank you guys for listening. If you are listening towards the end here, remember to subscribe. And we will also, I mean, any information to connect with Laura, whether it be email or social media, we'll put that down in the show notes for y'all. So if you have any reflections or takeaways from this podcast, please share it with her. I'm sure that sharing back, what you learned, what you took away, what helped you in this episode would probably go a long way for her to hear as well. So thank you guys so much for listening. We know that your attention is the most valuable resource that you could give us. So thank you so much, and we'll see you back here next week. Thanks so much for listening to this episode. Just as a reminder, do not forget, if you did not do it already, to enter the $100 giveaway for the 100th episode. All you got to do is a 5-star rating and review on either Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Then at the end of the month, we will draw one winner from everyone who has participated to win a $100 gift card. So it's super simple. We haven't had a ton of entries just yet. So go ahead and do that for your chance to win. All right. Thanks for listening.